This is a very good book because it taught me that our brains are fairly malleable. And I always thought that this was a static thing. You were born with a brain, and frankly, you really couldn't change things. But this book really explained to me, and I'll talk a little bit about Dr. Siegel talks about, and we have this at the end of the slide presentation. I think we have some references in the back about it. To talk about this intense emotional environment that young people go through. And if you recall from some of your early contacts, at least it was some that you could remember, it was extremely emotional, wasn't it? You relied heavily on your partners, your peers, their social engagement. You were into novelty. What I mean by that is testing lots of things. You know, you wanted to have the fastest car. You might be engaging in sexual activity. You might be engaging in using alcohol and other drugs, particularly marijuana. Novelty was a big part of it. But also it was a lot of creativity. If you remember back, your ideas were the best ideas. You know, you remember, you were going to fix the world. So that we all go through this period, incredible period of all of that emotional intensity, social engagement, creativity, as well as novelty. And that's what adolescence is all about. And Alice and I were talking about this slide earlier because it's really a move from a very small child being a dependent, you know, when obviously you're in your utero, you're very dependent. But as you grow up, your needs are about eating, feeling very safe, seen, safe, secure, and soothed a lot about, you know, holding you, having your parents cuddle you. It really is about all of those bodily functions. So it was a really dependent relationship. But as you start to go through adolescence and your brain starts to continue to make those connections, right now we don't even think about what we're thinking. You know, how do we feel? All of that processing, it happens in our brain. It's all about integration of all those feelings, sensations, senses, thoughts. All of those are all rolled into it. In fact, you can't even tell that you're really sitting in the chair, or that you have socks on, or you have your glasses on, your hair is crooked. Whatever that is, you don't even take that for granted. All of that is happening in your brain right now. Can you imagine when you were teenagers, all of those things being hardwired? Well, the truth is they're not hardwired. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through developing relationships, because that's really what it's all about. And Allison asked me about this earlier. We all think that adolescence is about moving from being dependent to independent. But actually, it's not. How many of you live independent lives? You have no relationships?
Few. I'm primarily independent. Almost dependent upon other people to a limited extent. Yeah.
That's the point. So it's really moving from dependence to interdependence. So it's not really ever independent. So whether or not it's your parents, your children, your spouse or partner, it's really about interdependence. So we really never get independent. We become interdependent in those relationships. So if you have a spouse or a partner, what do you usually do? I know for my partner, I talk to her several times a day. She asks, how's it going? She wonders if I'm eating well. That's the biggest issue for her. Are you eating well? How many cookies did you eat today? No, it's not really not that bad. But she cares about me. It's a part of my social support. It's a part of my interaction. So I want to dispel that myth about adolescence, that it's going from dependence to independence. It's really dependence to interdependence. So just think about that. And think about the long-term relationships you develop, whether or not it's with your adolescent children. Jason is about to go through that. Is that we hope that as we develop these relationships, we continue to talk to our children. And hopefully as they become adults and they have children of their own, they continue to have these conversations. So that is all about what the hardwiring is all about in our brains. It's a time to develop those key connections that help us deal with all those emotions, that deal with those relationships, that help us reflect about what we're doing, that help us handle the challenges on a daily basis that we face. How many of you have challenges in your lives? All of us. Clearly, we have to deal and help cope with these things. And usually we have self-coping things, but we also rely on other people to actually help us be successful. So I think that's really the message here. The final message out of Siegel's book is the brain doesn't really develop until age 25. So think about that. All these intense emotional interactions, not only with you as parents and adolescents are experiencing with their peers, or all the experimentation or novelty they're experiencing, that's affecting the brain's development. So if you're using alcohol, you're using marijuana, those connections are being interfered with. They're not helping the integration. So there's still hope for you. Even as a 63-year-old guy like myself, me understanding and being reflective with my partner, me understanding and continuing to read helps me continue to maintain those connections. And if you take this book or you read other things, understanding that the brain is still malleable is very important. So.